My God!
Detail assistant. Detail assistant.
A former judge looked into a camera and said something no one in his position says lightly. If someone brought him the right paperwork today, he would sign it. An arrest warrant for murder. Stick with me on this one because I want to go through this with you piece by piece, and I want to know what you make of it by the end. That's where the Nolan Wells case stands right now, and if you've been following this from the start, forget the timeline you already know. The last 2 weeks alone have put more on the table than the first two combined. Let's get into it together. First, the audio, because it's everywhere right now, and I want you analyzing this one with me instead of just taking someone else's word for what's in it. A recording of an emergency call to a boat towing company has been circulating online, reportedly made from one of the boats near Horn Island. On it, a female voice cries out. A male voice yells something. And in the middle of it, a name comes through clearly enough that thousands of people online have transcribed it the same way. Damn it, Bart, listen to that clip yourself if you haven't yet, and tell me in the comments what you hear, because that transcription is what's circulating. It has not been confirmed through any forensic audio analysis made public, and no established outlet has published its own authenticated version of that moment.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
So here's the real question I want you sitting with. What do you think that conversation actually captures? A name shouted in panic on a sinking boat? Something else entirely? I genuinely want your read on it. Now, the name in that clip belongs to a real person. And I think it's important you know exactly who we're talking about instead of just a name floating around online. Bart Edmiston Jr., a former Ocean Springs high school teammate of Nolan's, now a punter for the University of Wyoming, a person who has not been charged with anything. And according to the official Mississippi Department of Marine Resources report obtained by TMZ, here's exactly what's documented about him. On July 8th, an MDMR officer went to his home in Ocean Springs. Edmiston provided his driver's license and his boat registration. He signed the permission to search form and walked the officer down to his pier, where investigators pulled the GPS chart data off his boat's Garmin unit. That's the same process investigators ran on another boat that day, owned by the grandfather of a different friend in the group. Same paperwork, same procedure, run on more than one person connected to that day. I'm laying all of that out for you plainly so you have the actual documentation in front of you, not just a clip and a name. Let's talk about why a former judge is using the word murder out loud, because this is where it gets heavier. Carlos Moore sat on the municipal bench in Mississippi for 6.5 years, with the authority to sign arrest warrants up to and including for murder. On July 22nd, after reviewing the results of the family's independent autopsy, he said this on a live stream, under his own name. I am prepared to tell you that I would at this point sign an arrest warrant for one or more persons for the crime of murder. That's his personal read of the evidence, coming from someone who used to make exactly these calls for a living, and I want to walk you through what he's actually pointing at, because it's not nothing. There was a red discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of Nolan's head, and the independent pathologist could not say to a reasonable degree of medical certainty whether that came from trauma or from decomposition after time in the water. Here's the part that should bother you more than the audio does, and I mean that. The neck structures were never given to the independent examiner. State investigators kept them. Without those, nobody outside the state's own lab can rule out whether a neck injury played a role in how Nolan died. No lungs to check for water intake, no stomach contents, no toxicology. Sit with that for a second. The independent exam, the one the family paid for specifically because they didn't trust the state's version, was handed a fraction of what a full exam needs, and the missing fraction stayed with the very office that told the public there was no foul play within a day of finding the body. 60 witnesses have been interviewed by investigators so far, and still, as of tonight, not one person has come forward and said they personally watched Nolan Wells go into the water. Hundreds of people were on that stretch of island. I want you to think about that with me for a second, because it's the detail that keeps this case from sitting quietly as a simple drowning. Nobody saw him swim. Nobody saw him dive. Nobody saw him struggle. If you were out there that day, or if you know someone who was, that gap is exactly what investigators are trying to close right now. I have to give you the other side too, because I'm not here to only feed you one version and call it a day. Jennifer Coffindaffer, a former FBI agent who has reviewed what's public in this case, has said the evidence, as she reads it, points toward an accident, not a homicide. She's not connected to either side. She's looking at the same incomplete file everyone else is looking at. And she's landing somewhere very different from Judge Moore. Two credentialed people, two opposite conclusions, same case. Now you tell me, which one of them do you think is closer to right? The Jackson County Sheriff's Office has publicly asked for any photos or videos from the northwest tip of Horn Island on July 4th. Specifically anything showing altercations. Specifically anything with Nolan in frame. That request went out weeks after the sheriff's initial statement on July 6th that no foul play was suspected. Two very different postures, 3 weeks apart. Draw your own line between those two moments and let me know what you land on. The federal side keeps growing too. The FBI is already involved in parts of the investigation, including reported threats crossing state lines aimed at people connected to the case on more than one side of it. Judge Moore has publicly called for Mississippi's Attorney General to send her Public Integrity Division down to look at whether there's been any tampering or obstruction by local officials, and for the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division to open its own review. Since Horn Island is federal property with concurrent jurisdiction alongside the county, none of that is confirmed as happening yet. It's a public call for it, not an announcement that it's underway. And this is confirmed heading to a Mississippi grand jury. What isn't confirmed is which way it comes back. A $125,000 reward is sitting on the table right now for anyone who saw something on that island and hasn't said so yet. If that's you, or if it's someone you know, that reward is real, and so is the silence it's trying to break. So here's where this actually sits tonight, and I want to leave it with you instead of wrapping it up too neatly for you. A leaked recording with a name in it that nobody has verified yet. Documentation showing one former teammate cooperated fully the moment investigators asked. A former judge putting his name behind the word murder. A former federal agent looking at that same file and calling it an accident. And 12 strangers in Mississippi about to sit in a room and decide which version becomes the official one. Tell me where you land on this. Put it in the comments. I read every one of them. And I want to know specifically what you think that audio actually captures and what you think happens when this grand jury comes back. Subscribe now, because whichever way it goes, you're going to want to already be here when it drops.